Dr. Charlotte Laws is known throughout the world as the Erin Brockovich of revenge porn. She is a writer, television commentator, former California politician, magazine cover girl, and also knows something about crashing a party and slipping past the Secret Service. She is the author of the book Rebel in High Heels, which is a memoir about her life, including her efforts to visit justice upon the man who posted her daughter's topless photo on the internet. She is an anti-revenge porn activist, an animal rights activist, and a nonconformist who abstains from meat, alcohol, and drugs. Dr. Charlotte Laws, are you with me?
I am.
Doctor, no meat, no alcohol, no drugs? How do you get through the day?
That's the way it is.
Great to have you on the program. Thanks for taking the time this morning. I really appreciate it.
Sure,
oh, you're welcome. Now, before we get into it, your new book is out, Rebel in High Heels. How can people get the book?
They can get it on Amazon or on Barnes & Noble, and it should be in bookstores in a couple of weeks.
Excellent. Looking forward. Before we get to the book, which is a fascinating topic about your anti-revenge porn activism and your life, tell us briefly about your background, where you grew up, circumstances of your childhood, etc.
I'm from Atlanta, Georgia, and I was adopted at birth. And I had a tragic childhood. My adoptive mom committed suicide. My brother was killed in a car accident 2 years later when he was 16. And I had kind of a verbally abusive dad. And I come from old money Atlanta, so it was kind of a snobby community. And I basically spent my childhood trying to escape. And I was attacked for supporting the civil rights movement back in Georgia, so I was always the outsider, and finally escaped to Los Angeles. I went to school in Florida first, and then in Las Vegas, and ended up in Los Angeles.
So, and what's your family situation currently? You have one child, more than one child?
I have one daughter, and I'm married. My husband is not the father of my daughter. And so I was a single mom when I raised her. Her father lives in New York. And we live in Los Angeles, and we have 9 chickens and 2 dogs. I have 9 rescue chickens.
9 chickens, 2 dogs, 1 daughter.
That's it.
Sounds like the beginning of a joke, no?
It does.
So your daughter, how old is she now?
My daughter is 28 years old.
All right. So, and the reason I'm asking these personal questions is because it has everything to do with the book and your efforts to bring Hunter Moore and a cyber hacker to justice. So who is Hunter Moore?
Hunter Moore was the most nefarious revenge porn website owner and enjoyed humiliating women, misogynistic, had a cult called The Family. His followers would tell him that they would kill for him. It was kind of a Charles Manson type of cult as far as the language goes. And he was very popular on the internet. He was glorified by the media. He would post nude pictures of women from really all over the world, but certainly all over the United States. And he would put their name, their social media link, any identifying information that could be found would be posted by him or his followers, including the workplace, maybe their father's phone number. The goal of the followers was to harass the woman, try to get her to commit suicide, try to get her fired, basically to destroy lives.
And when was the first time you heard Hunter Moore's name?
When my daughter was hacked. Hunter Moore had hired a hacker to obtain photographs for the website, and my daughter had taken a topless picture 3 months prior, which she had never had any intention of showing anyone. She had taken over 100 just regular pictures in her room, and one of them was topless. And so when she got hacked and ended up on that website, then she called me in tears and told me about the site and about Hunter Moore, and that's when I learned about him.
How old was your daughter at the time
the photo
was taken?
She was she was either 24 or 25. She was born in December of 86, so whatever that is. It was in January of 2012 is when it happened.
Okay, so at least at the time she was adult, which doesn't make it good, but at least she wasn't a child. And so this Hunter Moore posts this topless photo of your daughter. And when did you begin going after him and seeking justice for your daughter and trying to get this photo removed, et cetera?
Well, I immediately started trying to get the photo removed, and I quickly learned that he never removed photographs. I used the takedown notice, Digital Millennium Copyright Act, but that did not succeed with him. And I quickly also learned that there was the hacking scheme, and the media at the time was saying that revenge porn was only about disgruntled ex-boyfriends and ex-girlfriends, and I knew that there was a hacking scheme because my daughter's friend also ended up on the site with a topless picture, and she had been hacked as well. And so while I was trying to get the picture removed, I started contacting victims or individuals who were depicted on his site to find out how they got on there, and found out that 40% had been hacked. And then I started helping the victims get their photos removed, which is why I got the Erin Brockovich title, and got the FBI involved, and so it ended up being a very grueling experience, which resulted in computer viruses, death threats, a stalker at my house, because Hunter Moore had such an avid following of these kids that said they would kill for him or do anything for him to protect him. So it was really quite an ordeal.
You're listening to Talkin Law Radio with Dan Hocheiser. I'm speaking with Dr. Charlotte Laws, author of Rebel in High Heels, which is a memoir about her life, including her efforts to fight revenge porn cyber hackers. Dr. Laws, was there any relationship before your daughter's photo was posted on the internet between Hunter Moore and your daughter?
No. She did not know him, and she did not know the hacker, but oddly enough, when we learned the hacker's identity, we found out that he doesn't live that far from our house. In fact, the high school he went to was only 2 blocks from the house where Kayla was raised. So that was really coincidental because he was hacking people all over, and it was quite random. It was a matter of whichever Facebook page he could take over, and then he would take over that person's email, and he would just branch out from one Facebook friend to another to another. It was whoever had nude pictures in their email and whoever's account he could get access to. That was what it was all about.
You see, it seems to me that when I think of revenge porn, is I think that somebody hacks somebody's account or posts a photo or a sexual video of some kind of ex-lover. But here, this seems more of just sort of hacking for sport. It doesn't seem to be any revenge involved in your daughter's case. Am I missing something?
No, I mean, you're right. In a sense, it's a misnomer, the phrase revenge porn, although it is revenge on women in a sense, because 90% of victims are female. But I would say that it's more like non-consensual pornography or cyber rape, because the victims act like traditional rape victims. They feel helpless, they go into the fetal position, they want to shut down their online presence, block out the world. So that's the reaction. It is a sex crime, and so I think that cyber rape is a better way to explain it.
Now, what happened to Hunter Moore? You said you got the FBI involved. My understanding is he was arrested, he was prosecuted. Tell us the status of that investigation.
Well, he has pleaded guilty, and he faces between 2 to 7 years in prison, and then 3 years of monitored or supervised release afterwards, along with a $500,000 fine. The sentencing date is on June 24th. So currently I am gathering together victims to speak at the sentencing or to send letters to the judge. The biggest issue is that most victims do not want to be identified.
So what U.S. Attorney's Office is prosecuting that case?
It's the Los Angeles. Everything's happening in Los Angeles.
All right. And let's talk about across the United States. I know you've been active in efforts to enact so-called anti-revenge porn laws. First of all, what is essentially an anti-revenge porn statute. What elements does such a statute contain generally, and what's the purpose of such a statute?
Well, it would basically say that no one could post or distribute nude or topless pictures without the person who is depicted's consent. So that's pretty much what it says. We currently have 18 states with laws against revenge porn, and Representative Jackie Spear of California plans to bring forth a federal law this year. And it's really important because the perpetrators, both the people who submit these photos and the guys who run these websites, and I say guys because it's pretty much almost always 20 to 30-year-old kids who live at home with their parents who do this. They're very afraid of law enforcement, but they are not afraid of civil lawsuits. And I think it's partly because they have no assets, partly because they figure the woman is going to have to pay an attorney $50,000 to $60,000 to bring the lawsuit to fruition, and also because of something called the Streisand effect, which means that there was a case many years ago with Barbara Streisand where she didn't want her home address depicted, so she brought a lawsuit against someone who did put her home address out there, and because she brought the lawsuit, all the media covered it and everybody knew her address. So women are afraid that when they bring a lawsuit forward, their name will be connected to the civil suit, and then all of a sudden they're connected with nude pictures, which is exactly what they're trying to avoid in the first place. Now we do
the old catch-22. You're listening to Talkin Law Radio with Dan Hocheiser. I'm speaking to Dr. Charlotte Laws, author of Rebel in High Heels, talking to us about anti-revenge porn laws across the United States. Dr. Laws, forgive my ignorance, but does New York have an anti-revenge porn statute?
I think, you know what, I can't even remember if it's one of the 18 states. I'd have to look at the list. But we have a list on endrevengeporn.org, which is basically the website that I'm associated with. We have a group called Cyber Civil Rights Initiative, and so it's a resource for victims. You can go to endrevengeporn.org, and there's a map there of all the states. And I can't remember if I knew New York at one point definitely tried to bring something forward, and I think there is a law, but I'm not 100% sure if that passed. Some states have had to bring forth the legislation twice to try to get it passed. I know Florida recently just passed the law, but they had tried to pass it several years back, and it did not succeed the first time. So anybody who's listening can go to that map and see if their state is included.
Additionally, I want to remind our listeners that they should go to rebelinhighheels.com to check out information about Dr. Law's new book. Get the book, read it, learn about anti-revenge porn law, and Dr. Law's efforts to stamp it out. Dr. Laws, before we switch to different topics, because I have a few other things I want to talk to you about, how is your daughter doing in the aftermath of this bad experience with having this topless picture of her posted without her consent? Is she doing okay? Does she have a career? Has this hurt her? What's going on?
Well, she's much better now that the picture's down. Her career is real estate. She's been a real estate agent for about a year. She kind of goes back and forth on how she feels about being linked with this issue. She's happy that we're making such strides, and so many things have happened in the last 3 years to protect victims and get laws passed. But on the other hand, she's not thrilled that her name is associated online with revenge porn, because she's afraid that it's going to hurt her real estate career or any other career that she pursues in the future.
Now, let's switch gears, if you don't mind. Let's talk Bill Cosby for a moment. My understanding is that you had a friend whose name was Sandy, who had a bad experience with Mr. Cosby that you have information about?
Right. One of my closest friends, when I lived in Las Vegas, I lived there for 2 years, one of my closest friends there had dated Bill for several years in a consensual relationship, and she introduced me to him, and he drugged her at some point and then had sex with her, but she did not consider it rape at the time because she'd already been dating him for several years. She felt betrayed. She didn't understand it. She was extremely wild, I would say. I mean, she was the kind of person in Vegas that if he had said, yeah, let's have an orgy with 10 people, she would have said, sure. I mean, that's the kind of girl she was. So the fact that he drugged her made no sense whatsoever. And so I don't know that she saw him after that because I stayed in touch with Bill for 35 years. And I didn't know that he was drugging people. I thought maybe this was a mistake. He had given her a couple of pills and said, these will relax you. And I just thought maybe they reacted to her body in some unusual way, or it was some kind of an error. I certainly didn't think he was out there drugging women. And in 2005 is when I learned that there were other individuals who were victims of Mr. Cosby, and I was really shocked, and I didn't really know what to do at the time. I didn't know whether I should come forward or not. I wasn't a victim myself. He was always extremely kind to me and gave me advice about my life, and very paternalistic, and so I didn't have a bad experience personally. And at the time I decided not to come forward because there were other women who were coming forward to support the first woman, and because I wasn't a victim myself, so I wasn't sure that my testimony even was relevant. And but however, last year I finally decided that I should go ahead and tell the story, which I did in a piece in Salon.
How did you meet Bill Cosby?
I was introduced by my friend who had been dating him, Sandy.
This is the Sandy woman who was drugged?
It's not her real name, but that's the name I used to talk about her. Yeah, so she introduced me in his dressing room at the Hilton in Las Vegas, and I probably saw Bill maybe 12 or 15 times over the years. Just if he was in town and I was in town, I would go backstage and say hello and hang out for a little while. And he was always very nice to me, so that's why.
When was Dr. Laws? When was the first time Sandy told you about this sexual assault that she claimed she?
It was back in 1981, so this was a long time ago.
And when did she first tell you?
She told me right after it happened. So she immediately told me.
You didn't tell anybody till when? 2005?
Oh, no, I told tons of people. All my friends knew about it all these years. I didn't tell the media. And, I mean, to me, the story back then was the fact that he was cheating on his wife, and the media never covered that. And that's what I always thought was so surprising, considering there was the National Enquirer, there were all these tabloids, and I was always surprised that the media never covered that. I had no idea he was drugging women. I knew he was cheating on his wife. But, to me, it wasn't my business, and I'm not going to go running to the media to say, oh, Bill Cosby's cheating on his wife. So, to me, it just wasn't my business. But, yeah, I told tons of friends, and everybody that knows me knew about the drugging or knew what happened to Sandy a long time ago.
Now, let's talk about the Secret Service. My understanding is that you have successfully slipped past the Secret Service 4 times, twice involving President Reagan, once involving presidential candidate John Kerry, once for President Obama at George Clooney's estate. Tell us about those incidents and why and how you did it.
The first time was not even intentional. I was 20 years old, and this was at the inaugural ball for Reagan in Washington, D.C., and it wasn't intentional. The room was so crowded, and I became extremely claustrophobic. I mean, you just could not even move across the room. But there was this very uncrowded VIP section that was guarded by Secret Service agents and a velvet rope. And I just started crying, and they literally opened the rope and let me in, and I was able to talk to Reagan and Jimmy Stewart and Rich Little and a bunch of different celebrities who were there. And so that's what happened the first time. The second time, I wanted to interview Reagan for my book that was coming out in 1988. And this was sometime in the mid-'80s. I don't, maybe 84. I'm not quite sure of the year. And so I first called the White House to ask if I could interview him, and they said no. They said he has a hiatus from reporters for 3 weeks. And so I knew that his staff was staying at the Beverly Hilton in Los Angeles. So I went over there. I saw these men setting up camera equipment outside the lobby. I assumed they were with the White House. I also knew that the president went to a party at Walter Annenberg's every New Year's Eve. And so I basically went over to these men and said, hey, does anybody need a date for New Year's Eve? And the chief White House photographer said, yeah, I could use a date, but we're going to Palm Springs. Do you want to go all the way down there? And I said, no problem. I said, will the president be there? And he said, absolutely. And he took my name and information for a background check, and I ended up being his date at this event, and I was able to interview the president, which was great. And then at the John Kerry event, it was $25,000 per person to attend this amazing event. I mean, it was really a nice event, I have to say. And basically what I did is I went through the metal detectors, and by the way, I always went through metal detectors. I could not have gotten into any of these events with a gun or a knife. So I feel the Secret Service did their job. I mean, I don't feel they were, to be faulted in any way. But I basically jumped into the group of the VIPs who had come out of this little private dinner thing to go to the main show, and I just kind of finagled past the door, and one of the Secret Service agents was screaming at me, "Wait, I didn't see your ticket, come back here," and I just ignored him and went on in. And then I wanted to go backstage to the green room, which is where everybody was. So all the celebrities, and it was really a nice little event back there. So I basically kind of befriended this actress and walked backstage with her. What happens if you start talking to somebody, as you walk past security, they think you're with the person. And so I ended up in this room with John Kerry and Leonardo DiCaprio and Ben Stiller and Ben Affleck and Robert De Niro, and Barbra Streisand was kind of coming to the door. And I mean, everybody was there. It was kind of an amazing little thing. Neil Diamond, everybody was backstage. And so, and then the last event, I had actually just, this was only in 2012, and I mean, normally when I do it now, I don't do it that often anymore. Mainly the gate crashing happened when I was like 16 to 25 years old, but sometimes I do it because it's a great way to talk to politicians about legislation. It's a great way to get somebody, signed on to a nonprofit cause. There are a lot of benefits associated with hobnobbing with the rich and famous. So I decided I wanted to go to this party at George Clooney's. I showed up late because I was actually not able to get there earlier that evening. And essentially what happened was there was this barrier. They had it, the whole streets were all blocked off around George Clooney's estate, but they removed the barrier temporarily. And that's when I just kind of bolted up the hill in my car. I got flagged down by a security guard, and he told me I had to turn around and go back down the hill. And I had this Rite Aid bag on my seat, which actually had ponytail holders in it. And I pretended to be reading a little piece of paper and said, "Oh, I have this emergency pharmaceutical delivery for a G. Clooney." And the guy just didn't know what to do, and he said, "All right, I guess you can go up."
Before you leave me, I want to ask you one last question, and if you could give me about 30 seconds on it, because we're almost out of time. But what is the bold zone?
Basically, it's just going at life with gusto. It's showing up. It's, going for your dreams, essentially. I mean, a lot of people don't show up in life. And so, I'm advocating that people do that, and I'm advocating that they be persistent, because persistence is the key to success, and other-centrism, or helping others, is the key to happiness. And so I just think people should pursue what they want in life, and you will be amazed at the success you can achieve.
Amen. Dr. Charlotte Laws, keep living in the bold zone. I will try to do the same. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks a lot.